As the smallest state in the United States, Rhode Island holds an incredibly dense history within a limited space. But that density is exactly what makes the death of a settlement feel more chilling and real. Behind its beautiful coastline, there are places that have fully become ghosts, while other small towns now stand at the edge of the same fate. From villages swallowed by forest to industrial centers now filled with decaying empty factories, Rhode Island is a real-life laboratory of how time and economic change slowly erase human existence. This is a look at 15 locations that have already fallen or are now moving toward permanent silence. First, let's explore one of its most remote locations. Hidden deep inside the forests of Smithfield, Hampton City stands as one of Rhode Island's darkest historical mysteries. This place was not abandoned because of a closed factory or a major recorded disaster. It seems to have simply vanished from civil records. That is what makes its mystery even thicker. Almost no one knows exactly how this town ended. What remains today are stone foundations cracked by large tree roots, an old open well, and boundary walls stretching with no clear direction. Some theories say Hampton City was a settlement for people with leprosy, isolated so they would not infect the town centers. But archaeological evidence suggests it was once an independent farming community. Walking through this site gives the powerful feeling that you are stepping on the skeleton of a small civilization that was deliberately forgotten. Its silence is not just quiet, it feels like a pressing emptiness, where nature has completely defeated humanity's attempt to settle. If Hampton City disappeared in mystery, Ramtail and Foster disappeared through trauma. In the early 19th century, Ramtail was a busy textile mill village, alive with the sound of weaving machines. But a horrifying event in 1813 changed everything. The mill manager was found hanging dead with the factory keys in his hand. Not long after, workers began reporting strange events, including machines turning on by themselves in the middle of the night. This collective fear slowly pushed the village toward abandonment, until a major fire eventually burned down its main structure. Today, only moss-covered stone ruins remain by the river. Ramtail is the definition of a ghost town carrying a supernatural burden. Its debris has now merged with the forest, leaving behind a thick aura of industrial failure, as if the land still holds the memory of the desperate manager's final footsteps. Unlike the previous two locations hidden in the forest, Napatree Point in Watch Hill is a silent witness to the brutal rage of the ocean. Before 1938, this place was not just a sandy point. It was an elite settlement with grand summer homes and a military installation called Fort Mansfield. But the Great Hurricane of 1938, the deadliest storm in New England history, wiped this entire stretch of land clean within hours. Homes were shattered into pieces and carried into the sea, while the concrete fort was partly buried in sand. Today, Napatree Point is a beautiful but haunting nature preserve. At low tide, the remains of concrete foundations and pieces of track from Fort Mansfield emerge from the sand like ghosts trying to breathe. It is a ghost town that was not abandoned because of economics, but physically erased by nature, leaving behind a quiet shoreline filled with secrets beneath the sand. From towns that have disappeared, we now move to a town threatened with a similar fate. It begins with Scituate, but in a tragic way. Almost no one realizes that much of this town has already become a ghost town beneath the water. In the 1920s, villages like Kent and Rockland were deliberately destroyed to build a reservoir. But the communities that remain around the reservoir today also face serious challenges. Geographic isolation, caused by much of the land being protected, has made economic growth stagnant. Scituate is now a town that feels trapped. If its young population keeps leaving because of limited jobs and several factory closures, the villages still standing on land may soon follow those already buried at the bottom of the reservoir. Meanwhile, Central Falls is one of the most extreme examples of a community fighting to stay on the map. With the smallest land area and the highest density, the city officially declared bankruptcy in 2011. The view here is full of contrast. Massive red brick textile mill buildings stand empty with broken windows, facing dense but poor neighborhoods. The number of abandoned zombie buildings creates a suffocating atmosphere of urban decay. Central Falls stands as a real warning of what happens when the main industry dies and debt paralyzes public services. If revitalization fails completely, this city risks becoming a permanent dead zone in the middle of the smallest state. Not far from there, Woonsocket faces its own ghosts. Once a global manufacturing center, downtown Woonsocket is now dominated by grand but silent industrial ruins. The many empty building blocks give the impression of a shrinking city. Constant population decline has caused many local businesses to close, leaving streets that feel too large for the number of people walking on them. Woonsocket is in a kind of slow death. If we walk near its main street, we can feel the silence of a place that was once the center of attention, but is now slowly losing its heartbeat. From there, let's visit a town in Kent County. Although it may look large from here, West Warwick is really the story of a collection of mill villages that have now lost their purpose. As the textile industry disappeared from New England, the town lost its backbone. Along the Pawtucket River, the landscape is filled with old industrial structures, beginning to rust and get swallowed by wild plants. Deep economic struggles have left much of the town's infrastructure poorly maintained, giving some districts a visual feeling very close to a ghost town. West Warwick is a portrait of a community trying to breathe inside the framework of a past too heavy for it to carry. Next is Pawtucket, a city that seems to carry a very heavy historical burden. As the birthplace of the American Industrial Revolution through Slater Mill, that former glory now stands in painful contrast with today's reality. Since its minor league baseball team moved away and commercial activity shifted toward larger cities, Pawtucket has begun losing population in several key districts that were once highly active. Many giant brick factories that were once filled with machine noise and thousands of workers are now only nests of dust, with windows covered by wooden boards. Although there have been efforts to turn some buildings into loft apartments, large areas remain untouched, creating a chilling atmosphere of silence along the riverfront. Burrillville offers a different kind of threat. a mix of geographic isolation and dark historical trauma. Beyond being known as the inspiration for the famous horror story, The Conjuring, this area has many remote small villages that are now almost empty as public services disappear. Its location in the northwestern corner of the state makes many young people choose to leave and settle somewhere more connected. Here, we often find old houses in the forest left empty with doors hanging open, creating the sense that nature is preparing to take the area back. The silence in Burrillville feels dominant. It is the kind of place where civilization slowly pulls back toward the mainland, leaving wooden houses to rot beneath the shadows of eerie old oak trees. So what about this town? Cumberland may look like a stable suburban town, but in some of its industrial corners, signs of decay are starting to appear clearly. Former mining areas and old factories on the edge of town are beginning to show worrying signs of neglect, with concrete walls starting to crack and wire fences turning rusty. The history of colonial violence that once happened on this land seems to give the place a heavy feeling that is hard to explain. If modern infrastructure is not updated soon and new investment does not come in, Cumberland risks facing social and physical fragmentation. Its older districts could become dead zones visited only by urban explorers, creating a disturbing contrast between modern housing and eerie industrial ruins in the same area, speeding the town's shift toward permanent silence. Moving to Hope Valley, this town appears as a classic image of a New England village slowly fading from attention. Many shops on its main street are now permanently closed, leaving faded old signs and empty storefronts. Without a supporting industry or consistent tourist appeal outside the summer season, the village has lost much of its vital energy. Here, you can feel time moving much more slowly, and every year, one house after another loses its residents as young people leave. What remains is a shrinking elderly population, bringing the place one step closer to becoming a rural ghost town, filled only with memories of the past. The silence at night in Hope Valley feels extremely thick, as if every old building there is waiting to collapse alone. Although Tiverton has stunning coastal beauty, deeper inland, in areas like Four Corners, there are worrying signs of economic stagnation for the town's future. Many 18th century buildings there now sit empty and poorly maintained because repair costs are extremely expensive for local residents. Geographic isolation from Providence's economic center makes growth in this area feel almost frozen in place. The real threat for Tiverton today is becoming an empty settlement, where homes turn into investment properties for outsiders, without a real community living there year-round. This artificial silence creates the feeling of a modern ghost town, where house lights may turn on automatically, but no real human heartbeat is pulsing inside. Next is the well-known city of East Providence. Although it cannot be separated from the state capital, this city has waterfront districts that were once very busy as oil terminals and manufacturing warehouses that supported the state's economy. Today, the sight of rusting giant tanks and wooden docks slowly falling into the seawater creates a very real and chilling image of an industrial ghost town. If waterfront revitalization projects keep being delayed by bureaucracy, these areas could permanently become dangerous and silent red zones. completely separated from the progress of the surrounding residential districts. The sound of metal creaking in the sea wind around these empty docks tells a story of deep economic collapse, showing that without renewal, this part of East Providence may soon surrender to corrosion and total neglect, becoming a modern ruin by the ocean. From the docks, we move to another town. Foster has the lowest population density in Rhode Island, and that low density is exactly what threatens its existence the most. With people spread out across a wide area and far from service centers, many public facilities are starting to be withdrawn or closed because they are no longer efficient. Many old family lines that worked this land for centuries have now left their homes behind, leaving small family cemeteries deep in the forest, now covered by thorny brush and no longer maintained. Foster feels frightening because it is a ghost town forming in silence. Houses are not destroyed all at once by explosions or storms, but are quietly abandoned one by one until only a vast, silent forest remains, swallowing every trace of human settlement that once existed. To close this journey, there is Gloucester, especially the village of Shepashay. Its main street looks like a time machine to the 19th century, but behind its classic facade, many buildings have serious structural problems and sit empty without residents. The very high cost of keeping historic buildings up to safety standards has caused many owners to give up and let their properties slowly rot. The lack of economic interest from younger generations puts Gloucester at risk of losing its social identity. The town is on a dangerous path toward becoming a collection of empty buildings that serve only as visual decoration for the colonial past. Without real human life settling and moving dynamically through it, this village will slowly turn into a beautiful but lifeless ghost town gallery, waiting until its last building finally gives in to age.